Tree Advisory Committee meeting, June 8th, and it's 4:06.
What do we have to push buttons today? Which button is mine?
You should look at the one to your left. Always to your left if you're on this side. If you're on the other side, it's your right.
We're going to confuse us today.
All right, you guys ready?
We're ready. Yeah, go.
All right. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
I'll move that. Approval.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So moved. The minutes are approved from our last meeting, which was May 11th. All right. Public appearances. Anybody want to speak? Okay, then we'll move on to the agenda review. Any edits or changes?
We have to move it, right? Somebody else.
Yeah.
Move to
All
approve
right.
the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Yay. I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we have one agenda item tonight, and that is the tree preservation ordinance update. And I wanted to start the meeting by I'm not sure everybody here has seen the presentation we did for the committee of the whole. And that was our final product, working on the ordinance from our committee and from our smaller task group. Since then, it's gone to administrative staff, but we wanted to show you the presentation, our final proposal to council. So I've asked Gana if she will go through it. And then please ask questions if you have them, any clarification questions, additions. I think there were just a couple of changes I saw that you needed to make.
So this is the presentation that Craig, Linda, and myself gave to Committee of the Whole in March. And so I didn't change it all since then. There are probably a few things that are a little bit different now. If you happen to have any questions or need clarification as we go through this material, please feel free to ask right away.
Did they have any questions themselves, or?
They did. They asked not a tremendous amount of questions, but there was a question on the clarification of one of our definitions, and were there any other? I'm trying to.
There was quite a bit of just general discussion, clarifying parts of the
Yeah.
presentation. So I think a lot of the questions were kind of covered in the presentation, and we just dug in a lot more detail. That meeting, I think we maybe ended up spending 20 or 30 minutes talking about it, so it'd be tough to boil it all down, but for the most part, it was clarifications of how we plan to, how we expect it to be implemented, and then also some questions just about what the meaning of the words is intended to be. So we wrote it in a way that hopefully will end up being clear, but people just wanting to clarify and make sure they understand.
And it's basically the same presentation we did with all the committees, the plan, the Park Commission, and RCC. So as people made recommendations and suggestions, we did a little bit of editing of the ordinance proposal based on that as
Yes.
well. For instance, we specified the species of trees that should be included on the plat. And we did a few other things too, but I know that was one thing we did do.
And as we go through this, there have been, so this was in March, this was the committee that, when we presented to the Committee of the Whole. Since that time, there's been a staff working group that's been working on this, and there's been some changes made, and as we get to those, some suggested changes made, and as we get to those, I'll weigh in, or I'll, kind of point those out as well. So here we go. So, whoops. Sorry, okay, that's what I was just gonna say. I don't, okay.
Yeah, the Committee of the Whole meeting was on March 22nd.
Thank you, Linda, yeah. Yeah, okay, it's not just me, I guess. Yes, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Now we're sharing. So, so just to start with, just to kind of put things into context, why we're working on this, and the big reason is because developing a tree protection ordinance is in the comprehensive plan. It's the comprehensive plan policy 1.3.6, and it's in the most recently passed comprehensive plan in 2020. It also was in the 2010 comprehensive plan. And, you know, and we've talked about this as a committee, just that we have existing trees that contribute, you know, to our community in a significant way, and we'd like to keep as many of those as we can to provide those benefits for future generations. And that's a pretty easy sell to this group. Yes, so we're missing
Alder?
we're missing Shannon, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So,
What was the question?
I just couldn't remember if the committee was 7 or 8 people.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Make sure you use your microphone, Sue, too.
I was whispering, no. I didn't.
She wanted it off mic. It was a sidebar.
Exactly.
all right.
Sidebar.
So, and just to continue to put things into context, when we have property line or splits, or when people want to build in the rural residential area in Fitchburg, they are required to do a survey of the trees and provide a heritage tree protection submittal, and this is what that looks like. That's section B3 of the rural residential development criteria, and just to quote it, you know, heritage trees and their critical root radius shall be fully protected and remain undisturbed by establishing a protected root zone. So that is that, along with the forest management plan, is required when development is happening outside of the urban service area.
So I think, you know, people ask, well, what will this look like? How will the developers respond, or how will private property owners who are developing in their land respond? And I think what we pointed out is that's already happening, and it seems to be working very well.
Yeah, and I reviewed these plans, and to my knowledge, there hasn't really been a big issue as far as I can tell. So, yeah, it's been working as far as I know. So basically, what we proposed is additional sections to 24.4, which is the preliminary platting requirements. And what we asked to be put in there was requiring any existing desirable trees to be included in the site plans, and as a planning tool. So we know that they're there when we're discussing, you know, the development of a parcel. And then any definitions for clarification are in section 54, have been added to section 54.5. I will say that in our working group discussion, legal counsel did suggest that instead of having the definitions in a separate section, to have everything in 24.4, just for ease of use and ease of understanding, and instead of having separate definitions, have word the legal language in a way that's really easy for people to understand, so they don't have to look anything up. So I think that's going to be one of the changes that we're going to see. Lynn and I just went to the clerks, and the council packet isn't ready. It gets posted at noon tomorrow, so we're not sure exactly what's going to get submitted, but don't be surprised if that's one of the changes, is that we don't actually have additions or we don't actually have additional definitions in section 54.4, or excuse me, 54.5, that everything is in 24.4 as it should, as, you know, as it needs to be for clarification. Does that make sense to people? Yeah.
Well, it seems to me like what it is and we have talked with administrative staff all along about this, well, certainly with the city attorney, is that what will facilitate the use? What makes the most sense? How do we incorporate it into the ordinances we already have, so that it's not missed, and so that it's very clear?
Yeah, and I think too, you know, when people are looking at their submittals for section 24, to make them then go to section 54 to look something up, I mean, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but if it's all there in 24, that actually probably makes more sense, and it makes it a little bit more clear and potentially a little easier to facilitate it. So I think that's actually probably a positive change that's happening. So don't be surprised if even though we propose definitions for section 54.4, don't be surprised if that isn't what ends up going in front of council.
One thing I do intend to look at pretty carefully in that staff recommendation, though, is a lot of times when people try to combine things into a smaller area, they drop things.
Yeah.
So my concern, we'll see if it bears out, is that the staff recommendation coming back is going to be less stringent than what we have with the separate definitions.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Because with less space, they're going to, there's the potential to cut out some of the things that I think are actually pretty important to the ordinance. So that's can't be changed now for the ongoing packet, but just voicing that as a concern.
Yeah, and I think that's, absolutely a legit thing to say. And when we do see, because this will get referred to our July committee meeting, and, and as we review that during that meeting, all these things, everything that you may, any changes you think are in the spirit of what was intended, that goes on. We can write that on the referral sheet. Then that goes with the referral sheet as it gets moved to other committees. So definitely, you do have a chance to weigh in, is what I'm saying. Okay. So anyway, moving forward. So these were the proposed changes. Was adding two things to the plat data. So basically, all preliminary plats shall show the following. Basically, where all the desirable trees are, and then also any, if we're going to retain any desirable trees in the project, and they need a tree preservation plan. And I think the reason for this was, for planning purposes. So as Plan Commission and other committees are discussing what's happening in a development process, that they see that there are trees, that they see trees, that they see that the trees are there. Now, when you look at any of the site plans coming through, the trees aren't on there. So, I think unless you know the site, you don't really know what you're missing. And in terms of the tree preservation plan, the reason we added that is often tree preservation is just considered don't knock it down. And there's a lot more to it than that. And we are sort of, I don't know if we're fortunate or not fortunate, but we did lose a lot of trees on Lacey Road. We were able to keep 4 of them, to preserve 4 of them. And in that construction project, we are hopefully doing a decent job of kind of leading by example on how you actually do work a project around trees to keep them in the landscape in the long term. So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things about constructions that's not necessarily intuitive. So it could be the manager's idea or the developer's plan to save trees, but the people actually doing the work on the construction site don't necessarily know what that takes. They don't know about like storing heavy equipment on critical routes and all of that. So, so in order to really preserve or protect trees, there has to be a plan.
You're exactly 100% right on, and you're 100% right, Linda. And we were lucky that because the tree preservation was part of the project, it wasn't an add-on later, that everyone is in the loop. The plans, the tree protection plans, then are part of the construction plans. They're part of the pre-con meetings. They're part of, they're part of the project. So the expectation is, hey, we aren't going to drive under these trees. We've got the fence up for a reason. Anyway, I could go on about that. And I guess I don't need to preach to the choir here, but you're 100% right, and that's kind of why we have this in there. It's like just not knocking them down is not enough. You actually have to do something to keep them there during the project. And then, so this is the definitions. This is, I'm used to having a mouse here. So the definitions that we, here, let me see if I can get this to, oops, no, that's not what I want to do. The definitions are, it's basically the definition of certified arborist, defining DBH, and most importantly, desirable tree. So, thank you. You're so nice. Look at this. What's Service from Fact TV? They're just awesome. Anyway, so desirable, so DBH, so we were recommending, well, okay. So the definition of desirable tree, I think, is going to be different in what goes to the council. And the two big differences are the species. What we kind of came up with was to keep all of the quercus species, to keep shagbark hickory, and to keep hackberry, because those are the trees that probably are going to be the ones that are worth saving. They're going to be the oldest trees on these sites and probably the ones that are going to be able to take the construction and thrive afterwards. So those were the species that are probably going to be recommended to be in the ordinance. What we've listed here is pretty much anything that might show up that's native. So, which is fine, but and anyway, so that's one of the changes that you might see, and I think that's probably fine. The other big change is the DBH, and we were recommending anything from 6 inches and over is going to be recommended as it will be in that desirable tree definition. And I think the change is, I think that there's been a 12 thrown out there and there's been an 18 thrown out there. And I'm not sure exactly where that's going to land. I did put together, and we can look at it here later, I did put together visuals of a 6-inch tree, a 12-inch tree, and a 18-inch tree, and basically how old those trees probably are. And we put together some pictures, and they're also in, one's in SC Johnson, one's in McGaw, and one's here right outside City Hall, just so people can get their eyes on to see what we're talking about and to see how large some of these trees are. So, and then the tree preservation plan needs to include all of these things. This is basically what you need to do if you actually do want to keep the tree in the landscape.
Do you know what the reasoning or the reasons were for making those recommendations?
So I think, so basically yes, good question, Linda. So as we have established that 6 inches is when a tree is a tree, and 18 inches is basically when a tree has timber value, or when basically it's kind of in the range of considered marketable or merchantable. So it's kind of another natural break. And trees of that size, if you're looking at this from a land clearing perspective, trees that are 18 inches typically can't be chipped. They need to be ground, and you're not going to move it by hand. You need a grapple to move them. So it's kind of a natural break in terms of land management and in terms of also just how trees are classified from a forestry perspective. So if someone's looking at it objectively, I think they're probably going to be thinking of things from that size and larger. And I don't know, so I don't know if we want to, so if the committee wants to recommend a different size, that's fine. There's lots of different reasons to recommend different sizes. I would suggest we don't just pull something out of the air, that we have something that we really feel like we can have some, I don't want to say backup, but some reason for choosing it. 6 inches was, I think, a good choice initially because that's when a tree's a tree. Like, that's what we're talking about. And if it's made it to 6 inches, it's probably going to be there for a while.
Can I just clarify? So,
Yes.
yeah, so when you call that the industrial standard,
Yep.
6 inches, that is indicative that the site the tree is growing on is a good site, promoting health, and it's
Yes.
well stabilized at 6 inches.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and right, and the tree probably grew there because a squirrel planted it, right? It wasn't, most of the trees we're talking about probably were not nursery trees, so they're very happy to grow there. That's where and if they've made it to 6, that means they're going to be there.
So from a process standpoint, I find these suggestions to be extremely frustrating because I think that as a committee, we tried to meet to establish these things before, so we would have maybe a unified idea coming to the Common Council instead of a suggestion from staff that is going to differ from the suggestions coming from the Tree Advisory Committee. And what the staff recommendation has unfortunately done is left us in a position where we will instead have the potential for differing recommendations, where we will have potential points of conflict that could have been avoided through an earlier discussion about these types of things. Because I feel pretty strongly that we shouldn't be reducing the list of desirable trees, and that 18 inches is an absurdly high number to put as the requirement for these surveys, especially since this survey isn't the requirement of what we have to keep. It is, in fact, a survey of what we have there to begin with, and having more information is going to be all around better. So I know, Anna, that this is not necessarily just a you process, but this is pretty frustrating to me.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I think, so the one thing I'm going to say is that advocacy is awesome, and that's something that the committee can do, if that makes sense.
I also feel very strongly that the council should get a copy of the ordinance that we're proposing and not the one that's been edited. And I think I've discussed that with a variety of staff, and I don't know so I'm not sure what council's going to get, but it seems, I would like council to get a copy of the ordinance that we approved and put forward, with separate recommendations from administration.
Yeah.
Ooh, I have a question.
Yes.
While we're on the subject of staff issues, I heard that some of the staff want to eliminate that the plan be done, that the survey be done by a certified arborist, and I would like to know who they think's going to do it then. And I think we should stick with that too. I saw something just now, and I can't find it. It said something about a certified surveyor.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, so I think the idea that some staff members were advocating for was that a developer could do it with someone who's already on staff instead of hiring someone. And what I said is, as long as the information's good, I kind of don't care who does it, to be honest. If a surveyor does it and they know what they're doing, fine. It's not that difficult of work, so it's not like it's that hard for, I don't know. So it's not, so I guess I understand what you're saying, and I feel like, an arborist would probably do the best job, the fastest and the cheapest. But if someone's out there who thinks they can do it and they happen to be a surveyor, they can provide the information, fine. I mean, yeah,
Concern I've expressed as well, and I'm sure you share it, is that we don't know if they're doing a good job. We don't know that they're qualified to do the good job, and the developer might have a different idea than the committee about what a good job means.
Yeah, my brother Joe knows a lot about trees, so he can do it. I think we need to stick with this requirement, and when you're talking about a development project, you're talking about so much money that this little bit that they would have to spend to get an arborist is like a peanut.
Yeah. And I think these are all awesome things that the counselors should hear.
Yeah, and that's the Common Council meeting next week does have the opportunity for public comment, and I plan to attend, and anybody else who wants to is encouraged to. I'll leave it after this and let you continue on, but sure. I do feel like every change I've heard is really benefiting only the developers and not the city of Fitchburg, not even the city staff, but it's just, for some reason, seems to be designed to appease the people who, frankly, don't need to be appeased in this way, so.
And I'm going to say this out loud, even though I'm on TV, where I came from downtown Madison, so you can guess my politics, but even then, everybody's impression of Fitchburg is bow down to developers, and that's what I'm seeing now that we live here for 20 years. And I just think it's time to stop that.
Yeah.
So.
No, there will be no shots fired. There will be no shots fired. Yes. Sure. Yes. Sure.
Okay. I think they greened it on for me.
Yes.
Okay. My question is, when we talk about an arborist doing the work, is the arborist, I have had people work at my house who work for an arborist. They're not certified. They're well qualified. But like, for example, tree service companies aren't always arborists.
Exactly.
So is there a way to define it, to sort of find a middle ground and say, we don't think necessarily Cousin Joe, who knows the developer, is going to do a good tree survey, but a landscape or tree service person, someone else in the field,
Yeah.
whatever that definition is or the name of that field of work, And then the question I have about the word surveyor, does that mean a land surveyor?
You
What
know,
does surveyor mean?
I don't know. That's a good question. I honestly am not really sure.
So I guess, this brings even a bigger point, is that we listened to all the feedback from the committees and from staff member in the last 2.5 years. So we tried to put together an ordinance proposal that included all the essentials.
Yep.
And we have planned for all of this. So we looked into how much it would be to have a certified arborist. It's a very, very small percentage of what it costs to do any kind of development. So I already looked into that. We also asked the question about the availability of arborists. There seems to be plenty of arborists
Yes, there are.
available. The amount of time it takes to walk through with Anna or other arborists I've worked with who can identify a tree.
Yeah.
They do it very quickly because that's their profession. That's their experts. So I don't see, it doesn't make sense to me to try to make it less expensive when it seems to be a very reasonable cost.
Yeah. And like I said, I think an arborist is going to be able to do this the fastest and the easiest because they know what to do. So I would think that would be the cheapest. But again, I think we want good data. And if it comes from a surveyor.
Well, what is it? What is a surveyor?
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
know that to say whether that's a good idea or not.
Yeah.
And none of us know sitting here.
Yeah, I don't.
And
I
so-
truly don't.
Right, so if it's an arborist or a tree service person, I'm sorry, I don't know,
Yeah.
the name.
No, you got it.
How it's named, but I know I've had people do work that they come right out and tell me, I am not an arborist.
Yeah.
But I've been doing this for X number of years, and they absolutely know a lot about the trees that I've had conversations with them about. So it's just a point. And then the other thing about a survey and talking about walking through, and that sounds expensive to somebody. Oh my God, someone's got to show up and walk through. But what Anna had pointed out early on was that sometimes drones are used.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
how much faster, and I know looking at aerial images, Google Earth images,
Yes.
people can tell just by looking at the silhouette of the trees from top down what's there. And so those might be points when describing this to the alders that if they've been told on one side, oh, this is going to cost X number of dollars, that you've got an answer from the other side saying, not necessarily.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think a surveyor is a higher paid profession than an arborist.
Right, if they're talking about a land surveyor,
Yeah, land surveyors, that's just, and I don't know those facts because I haven't paid for a survey in a while, but anyway, I guess I don't, yeah. So anyway, just to let you know, that's kind of one of the points of discussion. And thank you for bringing it up, Sue. I did mention to some staff that if this is done with a drone, fine.
If it's done with a drone, can they determine DBH?
They'd have to go and measure.
But they would know which trees to
Yeah,
measure.
give them an idea where to walk
start.
to.
Yeah, exactly.
measure.
So,
And I'll say my piece and then leave, but Craig's remarks I appreciate, and one of the things about the original 6-inch measurement, well, there's two things that I think are important to stress when you're making the presentation, is that a 6-inch oak tree is older than a 6-inch, now ash trees are dying off, but a 6-inch ash tree
yeah.
is far younger than a 6-inch oak tree. And it's, when you talk about diameter, it should be species specific. The other thing is that a good reason, I think, to stick with a 6-inch benchmark is that you will never know, unless you look at all of it, what you can do that still makes the landowner or developer feel that they are able to make use of their property, because they do have rights, and that has to be recognized. If there's a beautiful 100-year-old oak tree smack in the middle, that there's just no way, you cannot save it. But over in the corner, there's an acre, and there's 12 oak trees that are 6 inches diameter each. Well, if you haven't identified those, that might be where the parking lot goes. And it could easily, that's the reason for doing this. And so I just hope that when you talk to council and other committees, that, you know, it's not necessarily that we're saying every gigantic tree is that we have to save them all, but just a good rationale for keeping the 6-inch benchmark.
Well, and one piggyback too, not to say too much, is that those trees also have more runway. They're going to be around longer.
Right.
They have a lot more what?
Runway, in terms of they have their whole life ahead of them.
They'll live that many years longer.
So,
Well, thank you very
yes,
much.
of course, Sue.
Thank you so very much.
So anyway, moving on. Whoops. Oh my gosh, what the heck is wrong with me? Okay. So anyway, so the whole idea was that this would be part of the preliminary planning process, so that the desirable trees will be included in the site plans, and that a tree preservation plan would be submitted for any trees that would be preserved. That's the intent. And to Linda and Craig's credit and the rest of the committee, there has been a tremendous amount of homework on this. Just absolutely, lots, just commendable amount of communication with a variety of committees, all of whom are relevant to this topic. Met with staff, met with elected officials multiple times, took feedback, made adjustments, went back, did a tremendous amount of work, a tremendous amount of legwork, really did a lot of listening and a lot of adjusting and a lot of thoughtful consideration of the process. Absolutely no question. And this is an abridged list. There is actually a longer list, but it's like 2 pages long. So that's why it's not on the slide, because there's too many things to list. So just absolutely, this should not be a surprise to anyone. Does that make sense? All right. So move.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I just think we should hold the line on what our draft says and not be trying to second guess what the staff might say and try to weaken it before they even say it. You know what I mean?
What we don't know is what the council will actually get. I've asked that.
Well, why can't they get our draft? And not say certified arborist or your cousin Joe, or, you know, just, we should stick to our guns.
What we have pushed for, and I'm hoping this is the case, until we see the packet, we won't know if they've actually received what we've gotten, is our draft and then the staff suggestions as 2 separate documents. If that isn't the case, I intend to make that very clear to the council that wasn't what we intended. So hopefully they see both, because what I would like to do is explain why I think, mirroring the opinions of some people here, why we maybe disagree with some of those suggestions. So.
And I did send an email last week to Chad. I had met with him, and then I sent an email to him, our city administrator, saying that that's what I expected that he would do, so that the council would know the piece of the proposal that we were making as a tree advisory committee, after going through all the committees and getting their feedback and working with the administration. So that's what I asked to be done. And the packet's going through the proposal process now. Again, as Craig said, we won't know until tomorrow was actually being given to council. But you know, we'll deal with whatever happens. Yeah, I just want to be very clear to the council what has been, what has evolved over these 2.5 years after we've gotten feedback from everyone, direct recommendations and guidelines and limitations. And we met very early on with the zoning and planning administrator and the lawyers. So we started out immediately with staff. It's not like we went to all the representative officials and volunteers first. We started with staff, so.
And I think that's a really important thing to bring up. Even though it's on the slide, I think it's a really important thing to mention. So I think one of the sources of, I don't want to say confusion, but one of the things that we kind of heard when we were working through this process is that people didn't quite understand when this would be in effect, and we had people saying different things. And just to be clear, this would get triggered during the preliminary platting process, not for county road projects or people putting a pool in their backyard or things of that nature. So I think that just to be really clear, it's not a private take scenario in terms of if someone wants to, put an addition on their house or things of that nature. So I think we were pretty clear about that from the start.
And just from the tree advisory committee, where we might someday wish that we had that, that was something we had talked about in the beginning. And I think a future state might be if somebody has some of these heritage trees, we might like to at least have the opportunity to say, is there a way to work around this? That is not at all part of this plan, though.
Right.
That is something that I would love, but was not feasible at this time. So.
And one thing, just to piggyback on that I think is worth exploring is that there is a heritage tree project that's being done by Dane County, and it would be good to get some of these trees documented. All right. So, and then of course, how this would happen is that the materials come into the City of Fitchburg Plan Commission with submittals, and they're reviewed by the person by Plan Commission and the person in my position and other relevant staff. So that's kind of the how we kind of, that's kind of the basics. And then we were asked, the staff AQs I thought was a really good, I put them all on here. I don't know that we really need to go through all of these, but, and we've brought up some of these things before. So the purpose is, to keep desirable trees in the landscape, and also to reach our 30% canopy goal. And also another thing that we mentioned to Committee of the Whole is that we would like to be a tree city of the world. This is one of the requirements for that designation. I did email what we had suggested to Committee of the Whole. I did email that to the Arbor Day Foundation. They said that would meet their requirement, but I'd have to do that again if it gets changed.
Right, so you submitted the one that the Tree Advisory Committee wrote?
Yes.
Proposal?
Yes. And then why we're doing this now is because of the comp plan. And what have we done so far? A lot. A lot. We kind of went over that, but, just really talked to a lot of stakeholders, went to a lot of meetings, did a lot of presentations. And I will say that it wasn't just a talking it was a conversation, discussion, taking feedback, moving forward, changing things, working with people, all of that kind of stuff. So, which I think is really important for people to understand. And, the requirements, basically the tree survey and the tree preservation plan for anything that's going to be kept. And then, I'm not sure how this came about, but someone thought that there was a requirement to preserve all trees. It's like, no, nope, just trying to do better planning, do better thinking ahead so we don't say, oh, we wish that tree was still there.
We actually got that question a lot.
You're
looking at it saying,
right.
We're not just going to save all of these trees, and having to clarify that the point is not to prevent people from cutting down all of the trees. It's to get that information.
Right,
So.
but that did lead us to listing the specific species, which our city attorney also told us was a better way to go about it. So again, we've taken these recommendations, really good ones.
I agree, yeah. And so how would the ordinance be triggered? It would be the preliminary plat process, and it would not affect, other property owners. And this is a pretty important question, and I think this kind of gets to the meat of some of the discussion is, how do we come up with this 6-inch deviation? It's because that's industry standard of basically when a tree is growing in a particular place, we know it's thriving and going to continue growing there once it hits, if it has hit 6 inches DBH. So anyway, I think that's going to be, anyway, so that's an important point. Changing list of desirable trees. I don't know that we want to I mean, what we ended up listing under the desirable trees was pretty much anything that we might find that would be native and would be potentially worth keeping. I almost wonder if, we bring we add on or other trees that are significant to the site, or like we add a generic catch-all
Yeah.
or something. I don't know.
I suspect that would meet some resistance from the
Yeah.
city's attorney.
You're right.
As much as I think I like the idea of including one if it's a really memorable tree that's not on our list, I think having it open-ended was pretty heavily resisted by Valerie, and I kind of see why, so.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. And the expense, we've already kind of talked about that. Tree surveys aren't particularly expensive. I was trying to find because we just paid for 2 on Lacey Road, and I forgot, and I was trying to figure out how much we paid for them, and they're part of a bigger project, and I couldn't quite tease that out. I want to say one was $1,500, and one was like 22 or 24, but I wanted that actual paper, but I couldn't pull it out of I couldn't pull it out of the billing software. And then lots of examples. So these are the 3 examples that we chose. City of Mequon really has a very extensive tree preservation ordinance. It seems like it's working very well for them, and it basically regulates all desirable trees, or I think they call them specimen trees, across the city, public, private, wherever they're located. So that would be, I think that's kind of what we see as the gold standard. Our neighbor next door, the town of Dunn, they have a tree preservation ordinance, and basically the meat of it is that, you shall not cause heritage trees to be removed without written permission of the tree board, and shall not significantly infringe upon the root system of heritage trees to the extent that it is likely to damage the tree or jeopardize its survival. So and I think how they define heritage tree is mostly large oak trees. And then the city of Onalaska has an ordinance that's similar to, I think, what we're driving at. It's basically, because there's a lot of development going on there as well, wherever possible, trees should be preserved along lot lines, rears of homes, and common open space. And design considerations should be made to foster for tree preservation.
I think it's easier for people sometimes to look at like a new ordinance or a change if they understand that it's already built on something that is already happening in communities around us, but also in our city. It's not completely unknown for developers to build into their plans, or eventually the homeowner's plan, to preserve trees. So the Highlands of Seminole was developed in 1996, and they have covenant regulations that require people to get permission before they remove a tree, and then input about replacing trees. So in the original plan, there were desirable trees placed in all the homeowners' yards, personal yards, in addition to the wonderful trees, that the city has done. So it's not completely unheard of in the city of Fitchburg for developers to already be planning to have healthy trees in their areas, so.
All right, and then we used the courtyard example. There are examples that we could have used of current developments that are happening right now, and we didn't really want to paint any of our current development partners in a bad light or make them feel defensive. So this particular example is not from the preliminary platting process. It's a little bit more of a thought experiment and just an example of kind of what we're talking about, but not without making anyone feel like they're being called out. So the courtyard, which I think you're all familiar with, is a development that's happening. I think it's adjacent to McKee Farms Park. I want to say it's senior housing, but that could be wrong, so I should not.
No, I think it is.
I think it is too, but at any rate, and so this is the aerial photo of the courtyard prior to construction starting. You can see there's, a lot of trees on the site. I think there's, in the neighborhood of 20-something. And the tree that caught my attention is actually on the corner of it's down here. It's that tree right there. It's right on the property line. It's an oak tree. It would definitely meet our definition of a desirable tree. It was a beautiful oak tree. I don't know how big it was. It was much bigger than 18. It was probably in that 26 to 28 inch range. It was a lovely tree, has been there for a long time, and was thriving. So this is a picture of that tree. It is a beautiful white oak tree, just all around lovely. And like I said, right on the property line, the other side being stormwater, being city-owned property that's being managed as stormwater, and and part of the tree on the courtyard side of things. And of course, this was July of 2022, and by August or September of 22, this is what that tree looked like, because it was in the way of, I guess, a walking path into the park. And I don't believe the trees were listed on the site plan. And the hope would be, if they were, a discussion would have happened about, hey, can we try and work? Can we still provide pedestrian access to the park and keep that tree in place? And really, if you think about it, I mean, like, this tree would have added value, I would think, to the property once the building was built, as well as continuing to add value to the park and to the stormwater facility and those sorts of things. So keeping this tree in the site could have been, a win-win. And I will say, taking a tree, because we talk, people talk about land clearing like it's easy or inexpensive, but taking a tree, this size tree, from standing there, out of the way of everything, I thought, because it's outside the grading limits, you can see where the grading had taken place, and changing it to this, that's not free. That's not something that people volunteer to do. So that's just something to keep in mind, that like removing these trees is not, and clearing land is not, it's not a inexpensive endeavor. And anyone looking at this, I think, knows that, I would hope. But at any rate, so that concludes our the presentation that we gave. Okay, that concludes the presentation that we gave to Committee of the Whole. I've tried to highlight some of the changes that potentially may be made. Linda and I went to the clerks before this meeting. I was thinking if the packet was up, we could actually look at what the changes are. Packet was not available, so I guess it's kind of, I'm not really sure what is going to end up at council. I truly am not sure. It sounds like you sent an email that you'd like them to get the ordinance as we had presented it to
I
committee.
sent that to Chad last week. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so that's where it stands. I don't have a whole lot to say other than, in some ways, I mean, I'm glad we're at this point from a process state, because I think it's time to kind of figure out what's going on. But I do think that there is advocacy that can happen, and that's a good thing to do.
I want to say in all the committees that we attended, which would have been, all the committees are 4 or 5 people, 3 committees, 18 people, 20 people, in addition to whoever we talked to one-on-one, that not one person recommended increasing the size of the DBH at all.
And that's,
And in fact, there are many times people would ask about why is it not a more comprehensive plan?
and so just to kind of go over the process a little bit, so things will go to they'll be on the referral agenda for the council meeting on Tuesday, then it gets referred out. I am not sure who is all on that list. I think it's going to be Tree Advisory, Parks Commission, Plan Commission, I believe Board of Public Works. I'm not sure on that one. I believe CETA. I'm not sure on that one. And I believe RCC.
Right. So it should be Parks Plan, CETA, and maybe Public Works.
And so when the referral, as you guys have experienced, when the referral comes, the committee then reviews what the materials that are submitted, and then they have the chance to write their comments on the referral sheet, and then that goes to the council before the council votes. So the idea is that we've already talked to all these committees, and so they should have a sense of what the thought process is, and so there's a chance, there's the opportunity then to talk to them again, and
I think it's important for us to be there, so to answer any questions committee members might have, or council members, even for the Alder meeting or the council meeting next week.
yeah, and I think that's a good point, that Linda brings up. There is a council person on each of those committees.
Mm-hmm. Sue, did you have a question? Comment?
My final question is about the process of not knowing, as we sit here today, what version of this ordinance is going to be given to the council.
I'm very worried about that.
Well, it shouldn't be like that. This is the reflect, I'm again preaching to the choir. We've talked about that. But this is the work that you did. And it's not work that took a week or a month or even a year. And does not the mayor decide what's in the packets that goes to the council? So the mayor will get your request too that you sent to Chad, the city administrator?
Right. So the mayor does have to approve the packet before it goes to council.
Okay,
So if we wanted input, we should let the mayor know tonight, because today is when it's being approved. It'll come out tomorrow.
so an email to the mayor
Yep.
when you sign off from this meeting might not be a bad idea.
And just to let you know, all of the documents that we're talking about, they've all been in your packets, so you all have access to those. So,
The one thing that wasn't in the packet that I wondered about was, or was it? I know, so from the beginning, there has been questions about how the developers will respond. So Chad was willing to meet with some developers, and we have a list
Oh, right.
of the information he gathered from the developers, questions. And we have a separate sheet on that, which I think would be beneficial for all of you to have. And I would like it, actually, I would like to make it part of our minutes from today, because I think that's very important.
it's been, so it was in our minutes.
Was it in our minutes last
was.
time?
No.
I read it. I actually read it word for word at one of our meetings.
I want to say it was in the March. I'd have to look,
I
Linda.
think
It was
before that. Yeah, it was
in our minutes.
it
We
was
put
March
it,
or April, yeah.
so basically, all this information is out there if you want to pull anything. I mean, you've got it, you should have it all.
So I actually thought that we were going to be giving the council our draft plus that list that Chad had given us. But apparently, none of that's going to be in there. So, I don't know. Yeah.
It remains to be seen, I guess. It's all out there. I mean, it's.
Right. It's hard for committee members and alders, because, I don't know, we come in and do the presentation, they deal with it then, and they'll get all the information right before. Oh, Shannon's not here either. Anyway, so I don't think it hurts to give them another copy or review some of the things that we've already shared with them. I think that's an important document as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And so then Tuesday, when the council refers this out to all the committees, I know, Craig, you mentioned wanting to come to the meeting on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, to make remarks about it, and that's important. But that's not when council votes to approve or not approve. It's just, they're just saying, we're referring this out to all these other committees, and then it comes back to council for the big decision, what they're going to do. So,
So the one on Tuesday is more informative?
well, right, I mean, but it's important, I mean, the packet, this discussion about what are they going to see, what are they going to be referring out to all the committees? Your work or somebody else's work?
Correct.
Or both? And I guess in the perfect world, there's people who are interested and have different ideas, both.
Well, I think all comments and input and information is important, but I think it's important to know where it came from.
Yes.
Where is it sourced?
Right.
I think that's really important, and I think that the document that we took 2.5 years to develop, get feedback on, is important to stand on its own.
Right, and the
Without
alders do try to do their homework and read everything, so why not give them what, I'm, again, preaching to the choir. The other thing I came across maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago was the minutes for the Community Economic Development Authority Committee, CEDA, And they did not see this ordinance the first time around, but that's city staff that works on economic development, and they interface with Chamber of Commerce. And in the minutes there, it was stated that the tree ordinance was being developed, and it would require a tree survey of developers, and it would require them to develop a tree protection plan. And that is not what the ordinance draft ever said. And so, starting in March already, there was, I'm sure innocent enough, but a mischaracterization that went out to the business community of what this ordinance is all about. And I thought maybe that would explain some things that happened after that. So, and now, this time around, it's going to go to CETA, and there's a chance to set the record straight, which is good.
And I think you bring up a good point, Sue, because I think the value in going to all those committees to start with was, you know, they've seen what was put together already. So, but I didn't even think to go to CETA. It didn't occur to me because I just didn't think about it for whatever reason. So, which is a big omission on my part.
Well, yes and no, because the developers were asked via a different route to look at what was being worked on for comment. So it's not as though any group was ignored. But just given that there was, after March,
But there's a little bit of misinformation that people maybe.
that suddenly you're going to staff, and staff is telling you a lot of things that you're not understanding where they're coming from. I'm just wondering if.
I was also very concerned that I think there was something going around to decision makers that developers intended to clear cut the land. On the feedback that Chad gave us from developers, there was no mention of that.
No.
At the committee of the whole meeting, there was one developer there who spoke, and he had several negative things to say. One, he thought an arborist was too expensive, would cost too much money. And the other thing he said is, well, developers would just clear cut the land. And the truth is that there are some ordinances that protect that from happening. And that I don't think anybody assumes that developers are not going to, are going to be ill-intentioned. I mean, the whole goal is that we're working together and we have a lot of the same purposes.
And Linda,
As far as I know, there was one individual who said that, and if other developers are saying that, no one has said that to us or shared that.
well, and I think too, I mean, you bring up a good point. Well, so if someone's going to do that, I guess that's what they're going to do. There's nothing we can do about it. However, I would just comment that would trigger erosion control permit,
Right.
which I emailed. I think I emailed the requirements of that I think I emailed that to you. What the requirements of that are, which is actually a little bit more intensive than what we're talking about. And again, land clearing is not free. It's not inexpensive. It's not an inexpensive endeavor. So if you're concerned that you're gonna have to, look at trees, well, taking them down is more expensive than looking at them and measuring them. So
Especially an 18-inch diameter tree.
yeah. And so anyway, so I just feel like that's kind of an odd, to me, it's just a little bit odd, but so that's just one thing to keep in mind. And like I said, I did email you the erosion control ordinance that would get triggered if you were to do that. And so I almost think that's kind of a red herring, but that's just my
I
opinion.
think the problem is that the rumor went around to some of the decision makers that this could happen, making them nervous about what was coming up.
Right. No, you're
This was before our meeting with Chad in May. So there was a little narrow period of time where I think there was some misinformation going around, so.
yeah.
All right, I have to duck out early, but if there's any questions afterwards, let me know.
Okay. Is there any?
Thank you for coming, Craig. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
So anyway,
So I have a list of potential dates for the meetings, and I don't know if share that verbally, I can share that in writing, and I can send that to you after this meeting. I think it's helpful because I plan now. I put it all in my calendar now. I think it's important that we're at the meetings.
One thing I will say is that sometimes meetings do change for whatever reason, so just be aware of that. Like, even if it's scheduled, we haven't done a whole lot of that, but sometimes, there's a conflict with, for example, I think the Public Works meeting falls, the Board of Public Works meeting falls on a holiday, and so that may or may not be moved. I'm not really 100% sure. So just be cognizant that checking the meeting calendar online is always a good idea.
Right, and that's why I asked at the beginning, too. Does everybody know how to do that and how to find everything online about meetings scheduled and agendas? Yes. Yeah, anyway. And then our next meeting in July, we will formally be looking at what's given back to us for approval, for comments and approval. So that will be very important for us all to be here then.
Yeah, and in that process, you can comment, you write, you decide what your comments are going to be for the referral sheet, and you vote up or down.
Okay, and that's July 13th is our next meeting. I'm not sure what, so I guess, we're not sure when it will be on the agenda for the other commission, or the other committees. Plan Commission meets June 20th and July 18th. If we're thinking that everything's going to take place at this point, we're thinking that everything will probably take place between June 13th and July 25th. That the council will probably make a final vote on this July 5th. So that would mean...
I think it's 25th.
Oh, yes, you're right, 25th, yes. And that's on a Tuesday. So Plan Commission dates between now and then are June 20th, July 18th, 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. CETA is June 22nd, 7 a.m. on a Thursday. Parks Commission, July 6th, 6 p.m. on a Thursday. RCC, July 10th, 6:30 p.m. on a Monday. And then Common Council, July 25th, 7:30 p.m. And then our meeting is July 13th.
Do you have any idea what time on next Tuesday our topic will be on the agenda?
It's on the referral agenda, so they're not going to discuss it.
On Tuesday?
Yes.
They won't discuss it. You can still, I believe you can still come and speak
You can, at the beginning, yeah.
as an introduction to
Yeah.
this or anything else you want to say.
So which one of these will there be a discussion?
All of them.
Well, you just said at the Common Council it will not be discussed.
It will be in July,
Right, but in June.
correct. And you asked if what are the rest of them, all the rest of them.
So, but it will be discussed at the Plan Commission, CETA, Parks, and RCC?
Yes, because basically what the referral agenda does is it refers things out to committees, and that's how the council gets feedback from all the committees, such as tree advisory, such as parks, such as plan, such as CETA, such as public works, that sort of thing.
Yeah, about Public
Do you know
Works.
what time it is at the different meetings, or you just show up and wait until it shows up?
When the agenda comes out, you'll know. I mean, I have
Yes.
no idea what's on all of the agendas for those meetings. It'll be, it'll be listed and
So my understanding is that if you sign up to speak, and I don't know how it necessarily works with committees or commissions, I think it might be a little less formal, but if you sign up to speak and even to introduce yourself and whatever point you want to make, then we're available to answer questions if they have them later on and want to direct any questions to us.
And if it's something, like one thing that could happen, if you want to go and speak to, let's say, Plan Commission or Park Commission, you could ask to be the first thing on the agenda. Which, I mean, we've done that before. So,
All the public speaking is first,
yeah.
like ours.
Yeah, so, and you could ask if, so that's possible, if there's a time issue.
Yeah, good questions. Yeah, so the agenda is always in the packet prior to the meetings,
That's online.
and that's online,
Yes.
yes.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And they're online usually a week ahead, typically. At least, generally speaking, it's at least the Friday at noon before the meetings that take place the next week. So it might not be a full week ahead, but it's the week prior.
And as I find out when the dates are confirmed, I can try to let you know as well. And whether or not there are any other committees that the council will want this to go through. So as Anna said, the Public Works is another possibility.
Yeah, I'm not sure 100% what when the referral sheet will be part of the packet on Tuesday, so we'll know then.
All right, good questions. Any other questions right now? Or statements, input? It's pretty wonderful we've gotten this far. Process is
agree.
difficult, but
I agree. And I think we've raised a lot of awareness along the way.
we've what?
Raised a lot of awareness along the way.
Oh, yes.
Tremendous amount.
And what I think is that, and that was our conversation with Craig and I had with Chad last month, was about everything we had read and what we understood from how developers do business to how our communities protect and preserve and maintain our tree canopies, is that you always start with an ordinance. And that the practices of a city are informed by the ordinance. You know, you start with an ordinance and then you create practices to put things in operation. So I think it's really important that we have a good, solid ordinance to begin with. Because I think that there will be, as the culture, adopts these things, we'll see it in other aspects of operation in the city. And I think the other thing that I've learned is that developers start with ordinances. Those are the basic requirements. That's what they start with. So it's necessary to have an ordinance in place. All right. Don't hesitate to text me or email me if you have any questions about any of this or the timelines as we go through this process in the next month. It's actually very exciting. So, and thank you. I mean, we couldn't have a more skilled arborist or naturalist, and that's just been incredible. Thank you so much, Anna.
You're welcome. I try.
Every day, including this piece, but just everything.
Yeah, I try. So, okay, so are we closing the discussion on tree preservation ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. So report from department, I gave you a written report. We did our tree planting this spring, and it has not rained before or after. So we have been watering trees to the best of our ability, but we have planted about 2,000 trees in the last 4 years. They all need water desperately. So if you have got a tree near you, get out the hose if you can.
And I saw that that's posted online, which I think is really
Yes.
good on the city site.
Yes.
Please water trees if you know they need it right now, because
Yeah.
it's really hard to get to
Yeah,
everything.
I put that together, so hopefully that's that's understandable for people. I didn't want to, I was like, okay, I just wanted to be soundbitey, like, hey, it's really dry, it's really hot. If you've got a tree, if it's, this age, put a couple of, water on it two to three times a week. If it's a little older, maybe once a week. But anyway, so yeah, good. Thank you for noticing that.
No, I thought it was really good messaging, very clear.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, I never know, really, how things are coming across. The one thing I don't know, in your packet, I put together those DBH visuals.
Yes.
So take a look. I mean, so the 6-inch tree is here. The 12-inch tree is in SC Johnson, and the 18-inch tree is in McGaw Park. They're actually not that far apart from each other. I don't know if those pictures can be useful in the process moving forward, because, one thing that I was thinking is possible, I'm not sure that, I submitted a lot of stuff for this council packet. I don't really know what's going to end up in there or not. If you think those are useful, and I put an age on those trees as well, if you think that's useful, that could be an addition to the packets moving forward to the committees that are getting the tree preservation ordinance referred to, if people think that's useful.
And I was thinking the second tree, the 12-inch, it would be good to have an additional picture that shows the canopy, because you don't see the canopy. You just see the diameter, and the 6-inch and the 18-inch, you see the canopy, so you can get a sense of the size of it.
Yeah, that 12-inch, it doesn't have a ton of canopy, but we could try to take another picture of it. Emily was nice enough to help me with the pictures, because I couldn't hold the tape and take the pictures and do everything, so Emily was nice enough. I think on your second day, I was just like, hey, we have to take some pictures.
I think what it did show, though, is some of the shade, which is reflective of the canopy. I thought the sites that you chose for the 12-inch and the 18-inch were really good, and they seem like they would be really good examples.
No, and thank you for mentioning that, because the trees in S.C. Johnson, you can see them on the aerial photos going back to the 30s, and I think the earliest aerial photos are from the 30s. You can see those trees, and then you can see that where those trees are in McGaw, the tree we measured was 18 inches, but there are other trees that are larger that are in that little grove of oak trees, and they're in a fence line that you can see in those photos as well.
Well, I think, and just thinking about what I've learned in this whole process is, I think one of the things that really stands out for me is the example that you had given of a 12-inch oak tree. The estimated age of a 12-inch diameter oak tree.
100 years.
100 years? Yeah. That's my concern about having only 18-inch trees as well, diameter, is we will miss a 100-year-old oak tree. That seems pretty
And
substantial.
this is all good stuff to bring up. So one thing I submitted so there's a couple of different ways to figure out how old a tree is. There's really 3 ways. The first and most accurate way is to core the tree, pull the core out, and count the rings. Okay, well, that's pretty labor intensive. It also injures a tree. You're not going to want to do that to an oak tree during oak wilt, blah, blah, blah. Right. That's the most accurate way to do it, is to physically count. There's another method that is, it's a calculation of the DBH times what's called the growth factor, and different trees have different growth factors depending on how fast or slow they grow. It's not particularly accurate, but that's how some age of trees is calculated. It's a pretty it'll get you in the ballpark. It's pretty rudimentary. There is I think Sue had emailed this around. There is the Morton Arboretum in Illinois had cored a lot of oak trees and figured out an average of how old different oak trees were by actual trees that they had cored. So it's kind of a it's basically it's a lot more accurate than the growth factor way of that multiplier effect. So I included that chart of, it only applies to Quercus, but that's mostly probably what we're going to be talking about anyway. It basically says I think it starts at 8. It doesn't start at 6. But anyway, that these trees are typically this old, and it goes all the way through to, I think, 36-inch trees or something. I didn't include that in your packet because I didn't have it. It just wasn't one of the things I had ready. But anyway, so that's out there.
So you will include that then for the packets that go to these committees?
Well, I included it in. So I was asked for a lot of documents. I gave a lot of documents to Chad, to our city administrator. I'm not sure what's going to get included into the packet for the council, but it's something that we potentially could ask to be included in these committees.
Could we include that subsequent to this meeting for all the members on tree advisory?
I'll send you the link. Yeah, I should have done that. It's fairly straightforward. It's fairly easy to access. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
So you've got it. And Sue did send it out, so you've seen it.
Right.
Sue sent it out a couple of weeks ago, I thought.
Yeah.
I think that's probably why I didn't
I
include
think it was right after our last tree advisory meeting.
I think that's true, yeah. So I think that's part of the reason why I didn't include it in this packet, because I kind of figured you already all had it.
Never seen it. Have you seen it? I don't recall.
I don't know if
seeing
it was to the whole committee or if
Know
it
where
was just.
where it was sent
the subcommittee might have just gotten it.
Oh, that's,
Might have been the sub,
okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough. I'll send it out to everyone so you've got it.
just like the feedback from developers. I'd like I'd like you all to have that as well too, but I can resend that.
So, yeah, I think I sent that to you and Craig and
Yeah,
Anna.
yeah, I think it was a subcommittee, right?
Yeah, it was after I read the minutes from the last meeting.
Yes, that's right. 'Cause we
Oh,
were out of
right,
town
okay,
then.
fair enough. Yes.
That was,
Oh, here's our visuals. So, in fact, did you bring this up, Fact? You're awesome. So, okay. Yeah, what would we do without you? Not much, apparently. But
You
anyway,
should ask for your comments on this.
yeah, you've probably heard it more than almost anybody. So anyway, so there we go. And so the reason that I picked this 6-inch hackberry tree, it's just right here outside City Hall. I put a big ribbon on it. The ribbon's green, so it doesn't maybe stand out so much. But if someone wants to get a sense of what a 6-inch tree looks like, they can just roll the window down as they're driving and see it. So it's a fairly, and it's right on, as you're driving to this room, you're gonna probably pass that tree if you go up that driveway. So that's why we picked that tree, and it's pretty much right at that 6-inch mark. That is a nursery tree, and Linda, you're right, like that is a nursery tree, and it's not growing all that great because it's in an urban scenario with kind of crummy soil. But I thought from a visual perspective, I didn't throw an age on there because I didn't want to kind of muddy the waters, so to speak, because most of the trees that we're going to be talking about in the context of the ordinance aren't growing in this scenario, so they're going to
Right.
grow a lot.
That was my hesitation.
Right, and I totally understand that, and I think you're totally legit. The reason I picked that tree, and we could change it if we wanted to, but the reason I picked that tree is because it is something that's, you can see it from here. You literally can see it from here. So that's why, if anyone wants to get up to the window and look, they can,
Oh, okay.
it's right there. So it's very accessible from a visual perspective. Anyway, so, and it is a hackberry, which I think is important. Anyway, so, and that's the 12-inch tree in S.C. Johnson, probably, yep, there it is. And then the 18-inch tree in McGaw. And that's the smallest tree in this grove of, this is the smallest oak tree in this grove. Everything else is a little bit bigger than 18.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really effective.
yeah, so anyway, and I did, in what I submitted most recently, I put the ages of the trees on there, so there is a comment about how old they are. So that's, yeah. Anyway, so.
I have a question for you, Anna.
Yes.
So if I heard you right, you mentioned that you submitted a lot of these things to Chad, but you don't know what will be included.
No, and I submitted a lot of stuff to the working group, so, I mean, I'm a resource for information, so, I throw a lot of information out there, what the
So, and I
policy.
think the working group was you, Scott, Chad, Valerie, and Deanna, is that correct?
And Mike Zimmerman.
Okay, and he's from CETA. He's the staff member who works with CETA, right? Okay.
So I'm trying to understand still why everything that is important of a 2-3 year process is handed off to somebody who's not been involved in the process, and they're the one that decides what the council and the committee gets to see.
Well,
'Cause you're not in the room when they're saying, we're going to leave this, and we're going to keep that, and we're going to, nobody's
yeah,
last minute, there's no input from anybody associated with creating this document, this ordinance. Nobody is given is in the room at the end for what documents are going to go to the council on Tuesday and referred out to everybody else. So I'm just stating that I don't think that's right. It should have been, it's insulting in a way to everybody's time. And so I just want to make sure that's clear.
I think we need to keep talking about that.
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, and, right, and so, yeah. And,
Yeah, I guess my goal, it would be that the council see what was developed through all this hard work in the last 2.5 years, and that the input, of course, is really important from administrative staff. I think it should not be, I think it should be reflected as the source it came from. I think so that the council sees where everything came from. Yeah,
I will just say, I don't know if this makes anyone kind of eases anyone's mind, but the committee of the whole did see it.
yes. They
So,
did see
and they do have it because it was in the packet.
Yes,
So I think one thing that we've really done, I think, a pretty good job of is we've put everything in minutes, everything in packets, so it's all out there.
yes.
And it's not hard to find. I mean, it's all on the city website because we have done, I think, a pretty good job of like
Yes.
putting all of the changes in, talking about it at these meetings, making sure they're in the minutes and making sure they're in packets. So the information is it's out there and it's not hard to find. So that's one thing just to keep in mind.
I think that was why I felt it was very important that the rest of that our whole committee saw the information that we had given the committee of the whole. Because over time, things change a little bit, and we always talk about it here, but we've never presented it as one big package to you, which I regret. So I wanted you to see
And
what the committee of the whole, what all the alders have seen, all the newly elected officials. Yes? No?
Well, it was March, so,
Right, it wasn't quite. So I think Mr. Jutzer is the only one who wasn't there for committee of the whole.
yeah,
Everybody else would have seen it as it is.
yeah.
And I can send him the presentation. We can do that. Well, at least before July.
Yeah. So anyway, and I will just say, everything is a process. I say that all the time, and it's true.
I just want information to be accurate, and I want the alders to be well-informed, and the committee members. I think that should be our goal. I
Yes,
think we have really good information.
I agree. And like I say, it's out there. It's not hard to find.
Yeah.
So, all right. Report from department, I will just say that I wanted to introduce Emily. Emily Schwartz is our summer person this year, and she's awesome, and she's already been doing an awful lot of work. She took all those pictures, which I'm really grateful for. She's planted plants with us. She's been watering a lot of trees, which I am really grateful. We have to kind of make capacity decisions, and we decided because we're so far behind on moisture, we really need to decide, okay, what are we going to water and keep watering and keep alive? If we just kind of water a bunch of stuff a little bit, it's not going to be helpful. So we really decided we are going to water to the best of our capacity the trees that we planted this year. So we're really trying to keep those alive and make that a viable effort. So we're watering Post Road, we're watering Southdale Park, we're watering the newly planted trees around Seminole Pond, and you've been doing this, Emily. What am I missing? Hillside Heights shrubs and Rose Common shrubs, and that's about it. So that's what yes.
What about that ones in that accessible playground?
I think those volunteers are watering those.
They are.
I think so. Yeah. So, but you bring up a good point. Like, we plant trees like maniacs. I mean, like I said, we've planted almost 2,000 trees in the last three and a half years. They all need water. And so we kind of chose just to this spring, because 2 to 3 times a week, Emily's running around watering trees, which is, it takes half a day, if not longer, to water just what we mentioned. And plus, we also the other priority is watering the Lacey Road oak trees that are, they haven't lost too many roots yet, but they will in that process, and that construction process is very stressful. So we dumped 1,000 gallons of water on them, was it last week? Yeah, and we'll continue to do that to really put a lot.
Which trees are these?
So there are 4 oak trees that are, they're on the west, or excuse me, yes, the west, so they're just west of Seminole Highway, north of Lacey Road. They were originally probably going to come down, but we really did a lot of advocacy work. Sue kind of headed that up, which was awesome, and really got them on the radar, so to speak, and through a lot of diplomacy and a lot of just, meeting and work and talking
Well,
to
there's
people.
been a lot of tearing up the soil near them, so you feel like they needed to be watered?
Yes, so the whole road is getting reconstructed. So, and there's gonna be bike lanes put in, and the bike lanes now are going around the trees. So, but they will lose some roots in the process, so we are putting a lot of water on them to get them through this dry spell. They actually look pretty good so far, though. So anyway, so that's the other big, has been the other big priority for watering is the oaks on Lacey Road. Lots of other stuff happening, but it's all in the, most of it should be in the report. So announcements, this is, one way or another, something is going to be on the referral agenda on Tuesday. Which is, a good foot in the door if nothing else. And, after that, once we get that referral sheet, we'll know what meetings, the ordinance is going to. And our next meeting is July 13th, and it will come here for that.
So who will get the referral sheet?
It's,
The list of,
so if something's on the referral agenda, it's automatically put on the agenda for everybody on the referral sheet. And
for their next meeting? Is it, and it's automatic?
it's automatic.
Okay, all right, all right. Okay, great.
Whether we can add packet materials or not, I'm not sure. If you wanted to add, another, because they'll get whatever was referred to the council, and then if you wanted to add to it, I don't know how that, I'm not sure if that's possible.
Okay.
I don't know why not, but I don't know. I shouldn't
That's what I was
probably
hoping we could have done initially, was to try to include anything else that might answer any questions that might come up, especially with the edits by staff, the administrative staff, so. But- Sue, do you have an idea on that?
Well, just speaking for Parks Commission,
Yes. Notify the chair?
well, we'll probably have on the official agenda and packet that which the council sends to us. But on any given item, we often get emails from citizens with other information. And it just goes out to every, all of the Parks Commissioners' email addresses are on the website. And so if there's something that any citizen or committee member feels needs to be added, I would just do it that way. And you can do that with every committee.
Okay. And we can send materials,
Yeah, materials, it doesn't have to be, brand new narrative emails describing everything. If you've
Right.
got materials or you can write a nice long email if you want to, but if there's materials
well,
you
I've even,
think should be there that didn't get sent in the first
Right.
place, then,
I even wondered about resending the presentation, just because it's so inclusive, it has so much information in it. And I even wondered about just sending that in addition to anything
Right.
else, but,
well,
or we
and
can
I,
put it in a different format.
well, that raises a good point. Many times that I've noticed on Parks Commission, we're working on updating the Parks and Open Space Plan. And every time we talk about it, even if we're going to just get a quick update, we do end up getting in our packet, Scott Endel does that for us, the entire Parks and Open Space Plan.
Okay, good.
So if whatever it is you want,
Okay.
that presentation, you're right, it is helpful. And I would think, I just kind of assumed that should be part of what we go over.
I thought it was going to be part of the packet they're getting next week, but now I'm realizing I should make no assumptions or
Correct.
any expectations, because
Right,
they may get nothing like that at all.
right, you're right, that above all
Which is really disturbing.
should be there, yeah.
I will say that presentation should have, I'm not sure if it was part of the packet or not for Committee of the Whole.
I think it was.
I thought it was too.
Seems like it, yeah, I don't know. Well, we
Because
can
usually
find out.
usually that's the way it works.
Yeah.
So, so it's out there, it's grabbable, it's emailable.
As long as people have it in front of them when they're making decisions, I think that's the
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
I guess, at the
Because
the
we're
bottom line
sending
is
it.
if whatever is sent, hopefully it's it's what you want as chair, and whatever's missing can be sent separately.
Okay. How soon ahead of the committee meeting should that be done?
Well,
typically?
Parks Commission, we meet on a Thursday, the first Thursday, so I think most of them like to have the weekend,
Okay,
if nothing else. So
so maybe by the Friday before.
that
the
Friday
meeting.
before,
Okay,
and that might be a good rule of thumb for almost any of them.
I think that is a good guideline.
thank you, good, then let's do that, we have control over that, let's do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that, again, I've reiterated this many times, but my concern is just that the decision makers have the information they need to be well-informed and not have any misinformation, but,
Linda,
yes.
that one-page thing about the meeting with developers, that might be helpful
Yes.
because it was done and the questions were asked and answered, and it's short. So I would suggest that
Okay.
goes to everybody.
Okay, yeah, I'll make sure that's in there. Good, thank you. It's helpful. All right. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Sue either? Or Anna, or me? Or each other? Okay. All right, then I think we're ready to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
I move we adjourn.
A second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this meeting is formally adjourned at
So, all right.